Recently, news came out that Minnesota Wild's forward Kirill Kaprizov might have declined a very lucrative contract. Now, that being said, if he is a free agent next offseason, should the Hurricanes pursue him during the 25-26 season, or should they wait for next summer? Either way, it makes a lot of sense for the Hurricanes to pursue Kaprizov.
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a Thursday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you to the Everyday for making this your first listen of the day, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, talking everything about your Carolina Hurricanes. I'm your host, Zach Martin. I'm the credentialed Carolina Hurricanes beat writer over at the Hawkers, also the co-host of the Surge Cast, which is a weekly Carolina Hurricanes podcast, along with all my duties here at Locked On Hurricanes. On the Thursday show, we are going to talk about Kirill Kaprizov and why he turned out a very massive deal with the Wild. And if the Hurricanes do want to pursue him, how or what avenues could they go down to go get the player? But before we jump into all of that, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Now, word has come out, of course, is from Frank Saravalli, and of course, it's been coming out on The Athletic and all that stuff too. Sources say the Minnesota Wild superstar Kirill Kaprizov's camp turned down an extension offer believed to be 8 years, $128 million in a meeting on Tuesday in Minnesota that would have made him the highest paid player in the NHL history in both AAV, which would have been $16 million, and total dollars. That is something that's insane to think about, for the fact that right now, going into the last year of his 5-year contract, he's making $9 million per season. He's on the depth chart, top line left winger. And the thing too is he is only 28 years old, but making $9 million, turned out a $16 million deal. If there's one team who loves their Russians, and especially the Carolina Hurricanes, with the fact that if anything happened, that would be huge. Last season, in 41 games played, he did have 25 goals, 31 assists for 56 points, with a 1.37 point per game average, which is insane to think about. And yeah, he originally signed his deal back in September 2021 for, like I said, the 9 years at $5 million. It's 5 years, $9 million for a $45 million contract. And so far since 2020, 2021, 51 points, 108 points in 21-22, 75, 96, 56. And that's him playing 55 games, 81, 67, 75, and 41. So last season was the lowest amount of games he's ever played with 41, but still got 56 points. He's basically been over a point per game player since he signed that contract back in 2021 at the age of 24. Even his rookie season back in 2020, 2021 at 23 years old, he still had 51 points in 55 games. It's insane to think about, for the fact that already in 319 games played, 386 points, 185 goals, 201 assists. Like I said, it's a crazy deal to think of, because you're looking at 8 years, 128. That's $16 million. Like for what they're saying, highest dollar, the biggest dollar amount, 128, and then you're talking the highest AAV of $16 million. That's more than McDavid, Draisaitl, what Marner got, what Matthews got. Like I said, it's the highest paid. And it's crazy to think that if this is true, that his camp is like, no, we don't want, like, we're declining this deal. It really puts into perspective, well, okay, if you're Minnesota, what do you do now? Because you're going into a contract season with arguably your best player on the roster. Like I said, he's already, for his entire career, 386 points in 319 games. He came into the league at 23. He's 27 right now. He's going to be 28 by the time this contract's over. If you feel like that you can't sign him for an extension, do you pursue or do you look at possible trades? And people thought like the Mika Rantanen thing was huge last year, or looking at all these other moves, like, Brad Marchand getting traded, all that. This would blow the Mika Rantanen trade, the both of them out of the water if Minnesota's like, we can't sign him. We don't want him to walk to free agency and we get nothing out of it. Does Minnesota make that move? And like I said, that's a crazy thing to think of when you look at that for a guy who's got the points, he's got the goals, he's got the it factor. And now you're looking at him going, okay, he doesn't want $16 million for 8 years. If another team wants to sign him before that CBA kicks in where the 8 years is gone, someone's going to have to trade for him. Because if not, you're locking him up to 7 years. There actually be 6 years. Goes with the new CBA, that'll be 6 years. So you're going to be locking him up to a shorter term contract and probably a bigger AAV total. Or if you want that AAV, that number has got to go super sky high, or even the AAV would have to go up. And that's crazy to think about. So like I said, if you're the Wild, do you make that trade? And here's my thing about this too. The cap is going up next offseason. It's going up to at least $104 million. We're at 95.5 going into the season. So you're already talking at least another $8.5 million at least going up. What does that say for teams that they're going to have cap room next year? Or maybe there's some contracts on their books like, hey, if he turned down 16, if he's looking at $18, $19 million next year, who do we have on the roster that we can get rid of and open up some money? That really becomes a very big question for a lot of the contenders who want to go get a guy like Kirill Kaprizov. Because like I said, he's making $9 million right now. He just turned down $16 million per season on 8 years. With the new CBA kicking in and all that stuff, you're looking at if you trade for him, you're looking at 7 years at the max. 6 if you just outright sign him. What does that number turn to? What does that AAV become on a 6 or 7 year deal? Are you looking at 17, 18, 19, maybe $20 million a season? If it does go that far, because who knows what that looks like? Who knows what that deal looks like? I don't even know what the projected numbers are right now on a guy like Kaprizov. He could be an $18 million player. Look at those numbers. He could definitely be that. And like I said, there's contending teams. What does that look like with your current cap hit? Because you're going to have some money opening up next year. Because like I said, you're going to at least $104 million. You're at 95.5 right now. What does it say for the 27-28 season or 28-29? We're going from 104 to $113.5 million for those 2 seasons. That's some big jumps going from 95.5 to $104 million next offseason. And then the offseason after that, $113.5 million. Those are some big jumps. So it makes you wonder, do you make a move during the season and get the rights and get that extra year on top of it? If the Wild are like, we can't get them, we got to do something for them, is there a pursuit there? Or does the Wild be like, hey, then we're going to have to go all in, hopefully win it before he leaves? If he does leave, then for certain teams, are you willing to drop the money to go get them? And if there's some teams that are kind of close, maybe aren't fully there yet, are there guys off the roster that you trade off to open up the money for them? That's kind of the big question. Now, all that to be said, what does this guy do with the Carolina Hurricanes? Well, here are 2 possible avenues the Hurricanes could go down to get Kaprizov. 1 might be really hard. 2, maybe not as hard, but it'll be very interesting to see if it does happen. Is it a trade or is it just outright signing for him? Stick around, and I'll talk about each of those options here in a second on the Thursday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. Are you watching the Panthers, the Vikings, the Eagles? Whoever, there's a lot to be said when it comes to keeping up with game action. It's a quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays, not just by watching football, but making some possible bets. Who knows? So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Welcome back to segment 2 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. So, segment 1, talking about the Kirill Kaprizov news. What does this mean for him? What does this mean really for the league? And what does this mean for the Wild and other possible teams to go after him? That being said, about the Carolina Hurricanes, should they go for him? And if they do, what are the possible avenues that the Hurricanes could go down? Now, obviously, no one knows that the Minnesota Wild are willing to trade Kirill Kaprizov because he is your best player, and you kind of don't want to alienate your fans before the season or at some point during the season where you're looking like a team that punted on him and didn't really try to pursue. So a trade is possible. The question is, what's the ask? Obviously, you're going to be talking about another high-end player probably going back. If that's the case, who are the Hurricanes willing to move? That's really the main question. Who are they willing to give up to get a guy like Kirill Kaprizov? Because it's got to be a guy who's already a high-end player. You're basically almost going to elite for elite. You're probably going to draft picks, probably going to prospects. Maybe you're looking at 2 NHL guys right now and some other picks, prospects. This is probably a huge haul. Now, of course, Minnesota doesn't really have the leverage, so maybe it's not going to be as big if they had some leverage on it. So who really knows? Like I said, a trade is not impossible, but what's the ask going to be like for him? Because I don't think anyone knows what the ask would be. Like I said, is it 1 or 2 NHL ready guys right now? We're talking like franchise guys, elite players, and maybe a mix of draft capital and some high-end prospects. Who really knows? Like I said, no one knows what the ask is. But like I said, Minnesota doesn't really have the leverage if they go out there and be like, hey, who wants Kaprizov? Because some teams be like, we're not, like, we can just wait until the next offseason. We can go sign him. We don't have to give up X, Y, Z and double A and all the way up to double Z of all these things to go get them. We don't have to give up the assets. We can just wait it out. Because if you guys don't sign them, July 1st is right around the corner. We can go snag them. They could do that. Teams can just wait it out if the ask is too high. So I think the trade's going to be a little bit harder to pull off just because, like, what's the ask, and are the Hurricanes willing to go make that move? That's kind of the big question. Now, the other option is just go and sign him. Go and sign Kirill Kaprizov. Now, like I said, the thing is, he is going to be a UFA after the season, so there are no RFA rights. There's no having to worry about offer sheeting. Now, if the offer sheet was in play, this would be a totally different ballgame because we don't know what the actual numbers would be for the offer sheets, but like the $11+ million one that we talked about for the 25-26 offseason is 4 first-round picks. And the thing is, it's got to be for not the current draft coming up. So if we're talking July 2026, we're talking picks from 2027 and beyond. Here's the kicker. The Hurricanes have no first-round picks in 2026. However, they have 1 pick in 27, 2 picks in 28, and obviously they're going to have 1 in 29. That would have been the move if Kaprizov was an RFA. The Hurricanes would have 4 draft picks. They can go and give him a $16, $17 million deal. All right, Minnesota, go match it. If not, here's 4 first-rounders, but that's not the case. He's not an RFA. This is just this what would have looked like if RFAs were on the table, if an offer sheet was there. For 4 first-rounders, I think the Hurricanes would be probably fine with giving up 4 first-round draft picks for a guy like Kirill Kaprizov. However, it's not the case. There's no RFA to be had. There's no offer sheets to give. So that means outright signing him, UFA deal. Here's the thing for the Carolina Hurricanes. As of now, they have $10.64 million in cap space. Their deadline cap space, $48.659 million. Now, that doesn't really mean anything for this season because he's making $9 million. They have if they really wanted to, even if they don't give up contracts, they could fit his $9 million in. Obviously, if they trade some guys away, they're still fine. The Hurricanes could go trade for Kirill Kaprizov during the season and have the cap space to do it, with or without guys if they had to give up contracts and stuff like that. They have the money to go do it. The flip side is, if we're looking at next season, they have already $87.869 million already locked in to their cap of $104 million, meaning they have $16.130 million left in cap space. Kirill Kaprizov just turned down 16. If you're looking at 17, 18, and $19 million, the Hurricanes are within range to get him. But the kicker is, like I said, they have 16.1 available next offseason. If they want to get to 18, $19 million, obviously there's going to have to be at least, they could get rid of at least a contract to go get him. And with all the guys they have signed next year, it would really not be hard to go and do that. Because as of right now, in terms of their active roster for next season, they have 18 of their 23 main roster guys locked up to contracts. They're at full capacity this year. And then for 27, 28, and 28, 29, you're looking at 13 out of 23 and then 12 out of 23. And then if you're talking about standard contracts, 15 out of 50, 12 out of 50. Next season for 26, 27, they have 18 of 23 contracts already signed to their active roster, 26 of 50 standard. So if the Hurricanes really wanted to go and get him, they could, because as of now, they would have Mark Jankowski and Tyson Jost coming off the books, along with Mike Riley's contract and Alexander Keish's an RFA. They're going to sign him, no big deal. But they also have Frederick Anderson's contract coming off the books. Now, obviously, they're going to have to sign some guys and stuff like that. However, there's still an avenue where the Hurricanes could get rid of 1 or 2 possible contracts if they want to go and sign him outright to go make room for that money. Now, it's just, are they able to go get other guys for the main roster in standard contracts? Standard contracts, a lot of those guys being the AHL, you can fit the money in there somewhere. But it's just, like I said, you have 18 guys already locked up next season. Who are you willing to get rid of to open up that extra money, that $16 million to make it $19 million? You're only talking $2 million and some change in between that 16-1 and possibly 19. We're talking about a couple million dollars here. There's contracts you could get rid of to go make that room and give yourself space. You can get rid of at least 1 or 2 contracts to not only get Kaprizov, but to go get other guys to help out the roster too. So the Hurricanes, in reality, it's not zero. It is possible. It's just, do the Hurricanes make that move to go get them? It doesn't make sense to go get them, especially where they already got Nikolai Ehlers locked up. They got Jarvis. They got Svechnikov. They also just extended Blake and Stankoven. But we are talking about Kirill Kaprizov, a really good Russian forward who, like I said, who's almost got 400 points already in just a town for 300 games. That's the big question. Does it make sense for the Hurricanes to go get him? We'll stick around, and I'll tell you if it does or does not make sense for the Hurricanes to get Kaprizov. We'll talk about it. here in a second on a Thursday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, and get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever really touching a spreadsheet. You can identify that you aren't saving as much as you thought. Monarch helps you notice an inefficient investment allocation and discover forgotten 401ks from past jobs. So don't let the financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONNHL. Welcome back to segment 3 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. So we talked about the Kirill Kaprizov news where him and his camp turned down 8 years, $128 million, which would have been $16 million per season, highest paid AAV and total value contract. Also talked about what avenues the Hurricanes could go down to go get Kirill Kaprizov. If Minnesota does, or if they're willing to trade him, do the Hurricanes make a move there? Or do the Hurricanes just wait it out and go sign him in the offseason? What does that entail? Possibly have to get rid of other contracts, try to figure out how to build around him and the other guys as well, because you're already getting 18 contracts. What does that mean moving forward? Now, that being said, does it make sense to go get Kirill Kaprizov? And everyone who's listening is probably like, yes, it makes sense. Go get the guy. Duh. Why would you pass up on a player that already has 386 points in 319 games, already 200 assists, 15 away from 200 goals going into his 6th season? And I would agree with you. It does make sense. Because if you think about it, yeah, you just signed Nikolai Ehlers to $8.5 million. But you also got Logan Stankoven for $6 million. You got Jackson Blake for a little under $5 million too. And you look at these contracts, wow, these are steals. And the thing is, the Hurricanes left a lot of money on the table because they're looking at the now and in the future. And if you're looking at Kirill Kaprizov, he's like, oh, Kaprizov might be available. Let's have enough money saved up to go get him. And that's even without having to trade guys. If they have to trade a couple contracts off, hey, if he's asking for 19, we can get rid of at least one contract to get to 19. If it's more than that, okay, we can get rid of 2 contracts. The Hurricanes have the opportunity to go move money off the books if they need to go get a guy like Kirill Kaprizov, because then you add Kaprizov to a top 6, that would be him, Sebastian Aho, Seth Jarvis, Andrei Svechnikov, and either Jackson Blake or Logan Stankoven, and then you have a 2C available if you want to go get a 2C. Or you slide Stankoven or Jarvis over, probably Stankoven, and then boom, there's Jackson Blake sitting right there for you. Or you're looking at Nikolai Ehlers. I mean, think about it. You got Ehlers, Aho, Jarvis, Svechnikov, whoever is your 2C, and then you probably got Kirill Kaprizov on your top line, or however you want to do it. Like I said, at least your 6 is going to have Kaprizov, Aho, Jarvis, Ehlers, Svechnikov, and then Stankoven or whoever you want. You have a insane top 6. Your top 9 would probably also have Blake and Stankoven there in some capacity. There's a world where your 3rd line becomes your 4th line, and you still got the Jordans, and you still got whoever is with them. And then you have a 3C, whoever your 3C is. Maybe it's KK, who knows, or there's a different guy there. You go and find your 2C or you move Stankoven over. You still got Blake. You still got Hall. You still got Eric Robinson. The Hurricanes would be an absolutely insane team if they got Kaprizov and he's in your top 9 in some capacity. Obviously, probably be in your top line. So does it make sense? Well, yeah, it does make sense to go get him. It's just, do the Hurricanes want to go make that move is the question. Because trading him, yeah, you're going to probably have to give him a lot to go get him depending on what the leverage is. Yeah, you could go sign him, but what's the AAV going to be? Are you willing to go to $19 million for a guy like him? Because then you also got to worry about, too, okay, well, you got their contracts are going to come up. Nikishin's going to be an RFA next year with arb rights. You got to go get a second goalie to go with Kochekov. And you might, like I said, you might have to move 1 or 2 contracts off the books to go get Kaprizov and kind of somewhat build around the team. You got 18 guys signed to next year already out of the 23. And that's not even including Nikishin. So technically you have 19 guys signed next year. And that's not even including your second goalie. Your second goalie, boom, there's 20. You have 3 spots left. And you have a lot of these guys coming back for the most part. So in a world, the Hurricanes do have a legitimate shot to go get them. They have the money. If it's $16 million, they got it now. If they want to go for that 19, all it takes is 1 contract to move off. But then you're going to have to find other ways to go get other players with the very little money you have left, or you go move a couple other contracts off the books and make it work that way. Because here's the thing. After next, you're looking at 27-28, $113.5 million. You waited that out. You played it perfectly where you might be a little bit tighter in one season, but you're good in the next one. Because like I said, they'll have 13 guys on the active roster signed for the 27-28 season. With the cap going up to $113.5 million, that's $39.78 million in 27-28. 28-29, $42.946 million, because they're going to have 12 guys signed to the contracts. So if you have to go in 27-28 on a little bit of a tighter budget, maybe your bottom 6 looks a little bit different, or maybe your team looks a little bit different, not a crazy amount, but maybe you don't really have a tandem. Maybe you got a 1 and an okay backup. And maybe you had to go, like I said, move 1 or 2 contracts to open up a little bit of extra room just in case you need to add some other guys that maybe aren't on ELCs, or, guys that aren't taking a whole lot of money. It's very possible the Hurricanes could do it. The Hurricanes have the avenues. It's just, will they take those avenues? That'll be the big question. So if you're on YouTube, let me know in the comments. Do you feel like that it makes sense for the Carolina Hurricanes to go get Kirill Kaprizov, and would you rather do it in a trade, or would you rather try to find a way to sign him, but maybe have to move 1 or 2 contracts to open up the extra space to make sure to get guys around him? Let me know in the comments below if you're on YouTube. If you're on social media, make sure to hit me up at OneTrueZach, because I want to hear everyone's thoughts, because getting Kirill Kaprizov would be a huge move for the Hurricanes. Like I said, they have the chances to pull it off. It's just, will they do it? That's the main question. So let me know what you think. I'm very interested to get everyone's thoughts, but for me, it makes sense. And I wouldn't be upset if the Hurricanes did go make a move to get Kirill the Thrill down in Raleigh. But it'll definitely be interesting. It'll be an interesting year to look at if the Hurricanes, do something, or what if Minnesota? What does Minnesota do? Because that's one of their best players. What do you do? Do you try to sign them? Do you have to bite the bullet and trade them so you can get something back? Who really knows? But this will be an interesting 25-26 season for the Wild, and even for the Hurricanes, because do they have what it takes to go make the move, and will they make the move? That is the big question. But guys, this will be the Thursday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Thank you for taking your first listen today. For your second listen, just take the Locked On NHL podcast, where there is no offseason, bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter the most, with the local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube, or listen to your podcast. If you want to keep up with me, I'm at OneTrueZach on X. Podcast is @LO_Hurricanes. I'm also on Blue Sky at Zachary Martin, where if you click the link trees in my bio, you can find all of my written content at thehockeywriters.com. I've been putting out a lot of stuff recently. The most recent one was about Jordan Martinook and how he's closing in on 100 AHL goals. How I feel he's in for another career season, so go check that out. If you want to listen to my other podcast, The Surgecast, you can find it on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. For Locked On Hurricanes, we're on Spotify, Google, Apple, iHeartRadio. Wherever you listen to your podcast, make sure to follow, subscribe, leave a 5-star rating and review, because I might just read it on the show. For YouTube, it's Locked On Hurricanes. Subscribe, hit the bell notifications so you don't miss the show. Hit thumbs up so let me know if you like the show as well. Make sure to give it a thumbs up to let me know if you did. Share with other Keniacs to become everydayers just like you. But hope everyone enjoyed the Thursday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Enjoy your Thursday. And until next time, as always, let's go Canes.